Ford's 9-inch destroys GM's 12-bolt. The truth Detroit tried to hide. For over half a century, a secret war raged beneath America's greatest muscle cars between GM's refined 12-bolt and Ford's unbreakable 9-inch. One was built for efficiency, the other for dominance. But behind the numbers lies a story Detroit never wanted you to hear. Corporate compromise, racing scandals, and the rear end so strong, NASCAR teams painted it black to hide it. From the streets to the speedways, this was more than engineering. It was rebellion forged in steel. Get ready to uncover the truth behind the hidden war that shaped American horsepower forever. It wasn't the engine, the paint, or the badge. It was something far more secret. A war fought beneath every muscle car, hidden in steel, gears, and oil. For over half a century, two mechanical legends have battled in silence: the elegant GM 12-bolt and the indestructible Ford 9-inch. One was engineered for efficiency, the other for brute strength. One stole horsepower through precision, the other demanded it through force. But behind the specs, behind the factory brochures and magazine covers, lies a truth Detroit never wanted you to see. A rivalry that shaped American performance from the shadows. So before we dive deep into this war of gears and glory, I've got to ask, which side are you on, GM or Ford? Drop your vote in the comments below, because what you're about to learn might just change which side you stand on. Origins: a rivalry forged in steel. In the 1950s and 1960s, Detroit wasn't just the heart of American manufacturing. It was a war zone of innovation. Ford and General Motors were locked in a rivalry that went far beyond engines and badges. They were fighting to build the toughest, smartest, and most efficient driveline ever made. GM made its move in 1965 with the release of the 12-bolt rear end, a design focused on precision and efficiency. It was lighter, smoother, and consumed less horsepower thanks to its smaller 1.5-inch hypoid offset. Ford answered back with the 9-inch in 1957, a powerhouse designed not for elegance, but for survival. Its massive 9.0-inch ring gear and 2.25-inch pinion offset made it nearly indestructible. GM and engineers obsessed over friction and fluid dynamics, while Ford's mantra was simple: if it doesn't break, it's not strong enough. These two different philosophies, GM's calculated efficiency versus Ford's brute force, ignited a decades-long engineering war fought beneath the cars we loved. It wasn't about style anymore. It was about control, traction, and the battle to build the ultimate rear end. A battle that would quietly define American performance for generations. The 12-bolt GM's elegant efficiency. The GM 12-bolt rear end wasn't just a piece of hardware, it was a calculated weapon of corporate engineering. Released in 1965, it became the silent backbone of Chevrolet's muscle empire, hiding behind the roar of big block Camaros and Chevelles. On paper, it was brilliant. The 8.875-inch ring gear worked in perfect harmony with a two-bearing pinion setup, and the 1.5-inch hypoid offset made it a power saver. Less friction, less heat, more efficiency. GM's engineers bragged it transferred up to 3% more horsepower to the pavement than Ford's heavier 9-inch. And yes, it was 30 pounds lighter, because every ounce mattered when Detroit was under pressure to meet new fuel economy standards. But what they didn't tell you was that the 12-bolt's elegance came with a dark compromise. The C-clips that held the axles in place could fail catastrophically under high torque, sending the entire wheel and axle sliding out like a bullet casing. Those spot-welded axle tubes often leaked or cracked under load, something GM quietly blamed on improper service. The hollowed-out case, meant to save weight, flexed under the punishment of drag launches. That wasn't an accident, it was by design. Corporate America didn't want indestructible cars. They wanted parts to wear, to bend, to be replaced. So the 12-bolt became the perfect corporate compromise, refined enough for showroom bragging rights, but fragile enough to keep you coming back for parts. It was the gentleman of the muscle car world, efficient, elegant, and obedient to the numbers on GM's balance sheet. But across town in Dearborn, Ford's engineers weren't following the script. They weren't designing for accountants or emissions. They were about to create something so strong it would embarrass Detroit's bean counters, a rear end built to survive the apocalypse. The 9-inch Ford's indestructible secret weapon. The Ford 9-inch wasn't designed, it was forged for war. Born in 1957, this rear end became Ford's indestructible secret weapon, a brute of engineering that didn't just handle torque, it devoured it. At its core sat a massive 9-inch ring gear paired with a unique 3-bearing pinion support. That third bearing was Ford's ace card, distributing load and preventing flex where other rear ends surrendered. And then there was the genius of the dropout third member, a removable gear case that let racers pull the entire assembly out of the car, bolt it to a workbench, and set up gears in comfort instead of crawling in the dirt. It was as if Ford built the 9-inch for mechanics who thought like soldiers, swapping ratios like ammunition between runs at the track. The pinion gear sat lower on the ring gear, increasing tooth contact and creating legendary strength at the cost of 2 to 3% of power loss. But Ford didn't care. They weren't chasing efficiency, they were building dominance. With the right combination of nodular iron, NN case housings, billet caps, and 35-spline axles, the 9-inch could laugh off 1,200 horsepower, even 2,000 with modern aftermarket parts. Builders like Curry Enterprises and Strange Engineering still revere it today, machining upgraded versions capable of feats the original designers never imagined. And then came the whispers. Rumor has it that Ford's engineers built it so strong that GM quietly pressured suppliers not to copy the 3-bearing pinion support design, too costly, too durable, too dangerous to profit from. The 9-inch had become an outlaw of its own making, a mechanical rebel that broke the unspoken rule of Detroit: never make a part that lasts forever. But strength always comes at a price, and that price is buried deep in the math. The hidden math, the hypoid conspiracy. Deep inside every differential lies a quiet battle of geometry and physics, a war measured not in horsepower, but in inches. It's called the hypoid offset, the distance between the center line of the ring gear and the pinion gear. On paper, it's just a number, but in Detroit, that number decided who ruled the drag strip and who bowed out to regulations. The GM 12 bolt carried a tidy 1.50-inch offset, smooth, efficient, and light on parasitic drag. Ford's 9-inch, on the other hand, sat deeper, a 2.25-inch offset, pushing the pinion further below the ring gear. It was an intentional act of defiance. That deeper offset gave the gears more tooth engagement, more surface area, more strength. But it also came with a cost, heat, friction, and a 2 to 3% loss in power. To Ford's engineers, that trade-off wasn't a mistake. It was a message. They wanted a rear end that could take punishment without mercy, one that would rather waste a few horsepower than ever fail under it. The 9-inch wasn't about numbers, it was about survival. But across town, GM saw an opening. Their 12-bolt, with its shallower offset, ran cooler and freer. In the corporate boardrooms, efficiency meant victory. Less friction meant better mileage. And when the 1970s brought the EPA and CEAFE regulations down like a hammer, GM's design suddenly became the golden child of Detroit. Ford's heavy, overbuilt 9-inch was quietly phased out, replaced by smaller, leaner axles built for fuel economy, not brute force. But here's the part they don't print in the brochures. Some say the 9-inch didn't die naturally. It was silenced. Whispers inside the industry claim that by the late 70s, Detroit's executives already knew the 9-inch was a superior design, but they couldn't let a truck rear end embarrass their flagship cars. Ford's engineers fought to keep it alive, but the bean counters and bureaucrats won. The 9-inch wasn't killed by weakness, it was executed by mathematics. Not torque, not failure, just the cold logic of government efficiency charts and fuel economy mandates. The real world, Truth racers who knew too much. Out on the streets, far from the polished floors of Detroit's design studios, the real truth about these rear ends was discovered by the people who lived it, the racers, the wrenchers, the backyard scientists. While GM's engineers talked about efficiency and torque loss, Ford's 9-inch was earning its legend one midnight race at a time. Street racers learned its secret early. You could carry multiple third members with different gear ratios, swap them in minutes, and be back at the line before your rival even finished tightening his drive shaft. One old builder put it best: you could change from a 411 to a 3.00 ratio in the time it took your buddy to drink a Coke. Meanwhile, the GM 12-bolt guys were stuck under their cars for hours, shimming gears, checking backlash, and praying they'd guessed the pinion depth right. The Ford crowd, they just pulled 6 bolts, dropped the center section, and got back to business. That simplicity wasn't an accident. It was Ford's hidden gift to the weekend racer. And durability, it bordered on absurd. Builders still tell stories of 9 inches holding 2,000 horsepower. Without a whimper, you'll twist your drive shaft before those gears ever flinch, one said. But the war didn't end on the streets. It escalated to the grandest stages of American racing. In the late 1960s and 1970s, when NASCAR thundered across Daytona and Talladega, one truth became impossible to hide. Nearly every winning car ran a Ford 9-inch rear end, even the Chevrolets. Officially, NASCAR didn't talk about it. Unofficially, every mechanic in pit row knew why. The 9-inch could endure 500 miles of punishment at 200 miles per hour, while 12 bolts cracked under heat and load. Rumor has it, GM engineers tried to create a race only 12-bolt, but even reinforced, it couldn't survive what the 9-inch shrugged off with ease. The same secret spread through NHRA drag racing, pro stock legends and top fuel teams. No matter what badge was on their hood, quietly ran Ford 9-inch housings, sometimes painted black to disguise them. Builders like Strange Engineering and Mark Williams became the silent suppliers of truth. When the lights turned green, brand loyalty meant nothing, and physics ruled. The 9-inch became not just a Ford part, but racing's universal backbone. Today, the legend lives on in the aftermarket world. CNC machined billet aluminum cases through bolt designs, 35 spline axles, all descendants of the original warhorse. The technology evolved, but the soul stayed the same: modular, unbreakable, rebellious. The 12-bolt might still win the efficiency argument, but the 9-inch represents something greater: the freedom to build, to break, and to rebuild stronger. It's not just a differential anymore, it's a symbol of American defiance, forged in garages, tested on the street, and proven on the fastest tracks in history. In the end, this was never just Ford versus GM, it was philosophy versus practicality. The 12-bolt mastered efficiency and precision, while the 9-inch conquered strength and adaptability. One reflected the logic of engineers, the other the passion of builders who refused to compromise. Detroit wanted us to choose a side, but the truth is both were masterpieces of American ingenuity, two opposing visions forged in the same fire. And today, every time a gear shifts clean or a burnout holds firm, you can still hear the echo of that hidden war fought in silence, written in steel. So what's under your ride, a 9-inch or a 12-bolt? Tell us in the comments. And if you love real American engineering, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to keep this history alive.